Welcome to the PROUST Questionnaire.
35 questions giving us insight into what makes creative people tick.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of the PROUST Questionnaire. Caroline and I are excited to host two people today, a couple. We wanted to change the format a bit and see how this works, and it was incredibly fun and illuminating. The two writers we're talking to today are Lea Carpenter and Elliot Ackerman. Lea is a novelist whose books 11 Days and Red, White, Blue have really made an impact with a lot of people, and Caroline and I are both great fans. Elliot is a novelist and a writer as well, whose books include Places and Names, On War, Revolution, and Returning, and Red Dress in Black and White. Both of them write widely, and Elliot has also recently written about the role of veterans especially and the armed forces in national politics. We were so happy to talk to Elliot and Lea today, and we hope you'll enjoy this episode of the PROUST Questionnaire. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello to our first couples interview subjects today, a couple in real life and two writers who are both wildly envy-producingly gifted and talented, Lea Carpenter and Elliot Ackerman. Welcome to the PROUST Questionnaire.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We're filming this during lockdown. I get to see you all on Zoom for cocktails on Friday nights, and it's nice to see you looking like you're still sheltering in Delaware. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're sheltering, but you're not drinking right now, so it's nice to see you even without cocktails.
Not yet.
Okay, so we'll begin with we go in the order in which these questions originally appeared in the late 19th century, and so we'll start off with a zinger. And Lea, I'll ask this to you first. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
My idea of perfect happiness is lying on the bed with Elliot and the children and the dogs. And if not that, my second idea of perfect happiness is skiing first tracks with Elliot on a really snowy, powdery day.
That's in the heat of summer. That sounds especially good, I have to say. But I like that lying on the bed wasn't followed by watching Netflix or reading a book. It's just lying on it, just being with all of that.
Silence. Everyone on the bed in silence.
Elliot, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Well, I would say I would add all of Lee's perfect happiness images to my list. But I guess I should add one to be interesting. It would be sitting down with Lea in the corner table at Elio's, or a restaurant we like in New York, and I've just ordered the veal Milanese. It's really good.
It's been a little while probably since you've been able to do that.
Yeah, not since I guess February, so 5 months.
5 months.
Elliot, what is your greatest fear?
Oh, my greatest fear kind of goes back to probably my military days. And I've written about this before. It's getting lost. I have a pathology about getting lost. And I think that comes from when I was in Iraq or Afghanistan as a young officer, and you'd be leading patrols and everyone's sort of following behind you, and the idea of having to stop everything and turn around and kind of say like a little weasel, hey guys, I think I'm lost. I had such a fear of that when I left the service, I couldn't just shake it off. So when we're driving somewhere or going someplace, like I always need to know where I'm going. I have like redundant map software in my phone. So yeah, I don't like getting lost, but fortunately I've gotten pretty good at finding my way.
That's interesting. My greatest fear is loss, not getting lost, but loss, losing. I had a lot of loss, and it's losing people that I love. That's my greatest fear.
Mm-hmm.
What, Lea, is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
My social anxiety.
Okay, you and I have been friends for a long time. I didn't know you had social anxiety.
Because we're usually just hanging out, the two of us.
That's right. Yeah.
Or in the corner of a room crowded with other people.
Which I guess masks the anxiety?
I don't know. I've never gotten over it. As Elliot knows, going into rooms filled with people is hard for me. I'm not proud of that. I don't really know how to locate it. I like people. I enjoy my friends, but something about crowds I don't like. Makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Elliot.
It's very good in crowds, so that's very helpful.
So Elliot, what quality do you most deplore in yourself?
Maybe I've had a tendency to be too hard on people, or maybe hold a grudge at times when I really should just kind of hang it up and let it go. So, you know, I would say the things I've done in my life that I'm the least proud of are maybe grudges that I held a little too long. Hypocrisy.
Okay.
If you'd like to sidecar now into a conversation about hypocrisy, he can go on.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to develop that a little bit since Lea's given you the opening?
I say hypocrisy, people who play the victim when they in fact are the ones who have all the power, which I think is its own form of hypocrisy. So maybe like general falseness. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm sure there are many times in my life when I've been false, but I think falseness often comes out of a lack of self-awareness. I try not to be false because I'm always trying to kind of audit what I'm doing to make sure it makes sense. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, but people I've come across who really lack self-awareness often seem to fall into those paradigms of hypocrisy that I really, really don't like in people.
A new example is someone who's inauthentic to gain something for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
So it's not just they're not in harmony with themselves, but they're doing it to get an advantage.
Yeah, or and the thing like I mean, this is like a very benign version of that falseness, but like people are like, hey, like we're gonna have lunch next time we see each other, right? And like we talk about having plans, like, oh my God, we should all go to the south of France. Oh, we're gonna do it, and everybody knows we're not gonna do it. Like we all know we're not gonna do it.
Totally guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean, we all are in a little bit. I mean, it's like a very benign version of it, but I'm like, let's just let's be real. Particularly now, it seems.
It's funny. There's a big divide between let's have lunch and let's go to the south of France.
But I mean,
we're going to the south of France. We're going with people.
Well, Lee and I joke about it sometimes. So I am, because Lee does Lee works in Hollywood, and I'm actually from Los Angeles originally. I was born there as a little kid, but I left when I was 9, and never came back and became a total East Coaster. And I think I'm making a real generalization here, but I think just sort of there's that socially in California, I come across people. I love California. I'm from California, but it's just sort of culturally, there's a culture of like talking about things that are fun that we would like to do together.
That's optimism.
No, we're not going to do these things together. No. But it's a way people I've found, not, again, I'm not trying to come down on people in California, but I find it more there. Like it's the way they express enthusiasm. Like the way they say I like you is by talking about things that in an imaginary world sound really fun. So they're saying, isn't it fun to imagine that we would all go take this amazing vacation together someday? And we all know this isn't going to happen, but it's one of those things that like always grates on me a little bit. I'm like, let's just be honest. Let's just say like, maybe we'll like text in a month and go to Starbucks.
My opinion is I hate it.
Yeah.
My opinion is I hate it. The trait I most deplore in other people is pretension.
Yeah, how would you distinguish that from hypocrisy then? Since both are kind of a version of falseness, I guess, at their core.
Hypocrisy often incorporates intellect, whereas pretension often appears in the absence of intellect.
Do you have any examples, like sort of recent or distant, or where you feel like naming names, or you would never name names?
Not name the name Bunny Melon.
Oh no! Everybody drink.
Definitely not Bunny Melon. Sorry, that's a long-standing joke between us. No, we love and worship Bunny Melon. No, I think pretension often comes from a lack of education or knowledge or comfort in oneself, and I don't judge it as much as I find it distasteful when it pops up.
Lee, which living person do you most admire?
That, particularly having gone through the last few months in quarantine, that would definitely have to be Elliot, although perhaps in a close tie with my mother, who are both, I don't want to edit my earlier answer, but a quality I really admire in anyone is patience, and Elliot has unending patience for me and for the children, and my mother does too, and so I really admire that.
Elliot, how about you? Which living person do you most admire?
Don't have to say me.
Well, I do admire you. I do admire you. I think, one of the things that's been nice about this time is it has, Lea and I will talk about this, and as tough as this time has been, it's really been sort of unique. And there are moments of this that I will look back on and think of with some nostalgia, particularly as for our family, which is a blended family. We have 4 kids between us. We live between 2 different cities. We've all really been sighted together. And so one of the things that's been really special is it's given us time to sort of observe and lean on each other in ways that we haven't always. So I really admire Lea. We are, you learn a lot about a relationship, and you really see the good things and what works when they work. But our 4 kids, I really admire. Like, they are like just little super troopers, and they are so resilient. And it's sort of amazing to observe children in all of this as the adults are sort of falling apart as our worlds, are challenged. And so many kids I've rubbed up against are the ones who demonstrate the type of resiliency that I admire most.
That's very optimism inspiring too, when we think about the next generation and how the world will recover from all this. It's great to think. My husband and I are not sheltering with any children right now, although I saw my 2 goddaughters recently, and again I was impressed at how kind of nonplussed they are by the radical changes that this has affected in their lives. What is the age range of your children? Lea, your 2 sons will always be babies to me because that's how I remember them first. But how old is everybody now, roughly?
Just turned 12, about to turn 10, and 2 just turned 8-year-olds. So okay. My boys are 12 and 8, and Elliot has a son who's 8 and a daughter who's 9, about to be 10.
So they're pre-teen, so the oldest ones are 12.
A pack.
Yeah.
The oldest is 12, yeah.
Lea, what is your greatest extravagance?
Clothes, which has been completely, I have not indulged in my greatest extravagance in a long time now, but I think it's, buying something online that I will wear once. And I love clothes and the idea that I have a lifestyle in which I need to actually wear beautiful clothes, which I don't really, but in my mind I do. That feels like a kind of hypocrisy, even as I describe it. But and one thing I share with Caroline, I love looking at beautiful clothes. I don't often buy them or wear them, but it feels like an extravagance.
Elliot, how about you? What's your greatest extravagance?
Lea.
She's your extravagance and also your greatest necessity, or how are you defining extravagance in that case?
That I love her, and I think it's an extravagance that I get to be with her every day.
Yeah. Elliot, what is your current state of mind?
Calm, happy. I'm generally an optimist. I think I'm sort of like a very grumpy optimist. I like to kind of walk around like at a low growl, but I'm always sort of happy on the inside while I'm growling. I'm like a dog that needs I'm a dog that needs the mail truck to chase after.
Yeah, is it Elliot or Lea? Isn't there some phrase that was it Kant used to describe himself as like a misanthrope, like a humanitarian misanthrope, or somebody who hated humanity and loved humanity? What is the expression again?
Oh yeah, no, I don't know what the expression is. Yeah, I thought it's called a realist actually, but
right.
I actually don't know. I have to look what Kant's. Yeah, probably not a growling dog, but
yeah, I was gonna say it's a terrier basically, but I'm sorry, that took us away from Lea. Lea, what is your current state of mind?
I was feeling pretty anxious, but I feel better now. Anxious about people getting sick and anxious about the country. But with Elliot's help, I think I feel calmer now. So I guess my state of mind is whipsawing between calm and anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, I'm worried about the country right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and there is that weird, some of the other people we've spoken to in lockdown have mentioned this as well, the weird disconnect between being at home, everyone in your family being well, knowing that you're safe, and yet kind of looking at the news and looking at what's going on around us and seeing so much that's frightening. So I think it's hard maybe not to whipsaw, and especially if loss is your great fear, Lee. Is there anything you do besides get counsel from Elliot to kind of help calm yourself down, or like cooking, walking, cleaning?
I do a lot of cleaning. I'm very good at laundry. And I listened to this interview, which has always stuck with me, with General McChrystal, Stan McChrystal, who Elliot knows, an Army general. And he went through an incredible crisis in his career, which I won't divert into, but which resulted in his resignation. And he was asked by this interviewer, how did you get through that period? And he said, and Elliot and I talk a lot about this concept. He said, if I exercise, if I get in a workout, then I can handle anything. If I get 1 hour of exercise, then that I feel in control of my day, and things can go pretty far off the rails, but I have accomplished that one thing. And that always stuck with me. And my one thing may not be exercise every day, but I try and have sort of one thing. If I get that accomplished, then, maybe the egg won't be boiled right and the bed won't be made right and I won't hit the deadline, but I got that one thing accomplished. So
one thing Lee's been doing that I love, I don't know if it calms you, but as we're moving around the house and we have different kids in the house, she's been listening to this Andrew Roberts biography of Churchill, which I'm pretty sure it's narrated by Churchill, because the narrator sounds exactly like Churchill. In a room and Lee's not there, I kind of hear this rumbling, they were crossing the beaches on the second day, and then he walks in, walks out.
It's 53 hours long, and I usually only listen to it when I'm doing laundry, and I'm in hour 49, which tells you how much laundry I've done. Okay.
Well, so yeah, you've accomplished a lot, and that is the great thing about Audible books, that
Yes.
You can feel like you're accomplishing two things at once. Often, I do a lot of driving to the garden store, and Audible's great.
Elliot's shirts, but I'm a scholar. I'm a scholar.
You're
shirts.
You're a scholar of World War II. Well, and not a bad period, obviously. I think a lot of people have kind of reclaimed an interest in World War II during this time, to think about resilience and kind of the English case of just carrying on despite kind of constant barrages of bad news and bad things happening. What do you consider, Lee, the most overrated virtue?
Patience. Is that a virtue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why overrated?
You said you loved about me.
I know. I'm glad. I didn't want to point that out if you didn't notice it, Elliot.
Okay, I changed my mind to moderation. I changed to moderation.
Moderation, okay.
Yeah, I admire patience in other people, and I also find it a overrated virtue, because I find that some of the people who I admire in life, who really get things done, actually are impatient. So there, I just that was hypocritical, I guess. But.
We're touching all of your least favorite things, both of you. Elliot, what do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Well, this is going to sound kind of terrible, but let me explain. A certain type of kindness.
Okay.
I think the type of kindness that is comes from a really deep place is extremely important. And some of the people I admire most, I admire them because they are kind. But there's a certain type of kindness that seems to be very prevalent, that's just sort of like a bubbly kind of frothy kindness that doesn't really get you anything. I feel like that type of kindness, I'd rather have like the person who's really grumpy and true, and I certainly have a few people like that in my life, than the person who's sort of bubbly and kind, but there's not much beneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton was not patient.
Right.
No, he was not.
Pathologically impatient, and look what he
Right.
did. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leon, what occasion do you lie?
I lie when I tell my children that if they don't brush their teeth, the dentist will tear all of their teeth out.
Oh, wow.
I lie about toothbrushing. I think to the kids, if I have told a lie if I'm trying to convince them of the importance of something, but I try and make it sort of a funny lie, because of course the dentist would never tear all your teeth out, but that's what comes immediately to mind.
Well, I grew up with Grimm's fairy tales because I was raised in Germany, where all these things seem totally true to people. So
Yeah.
actually, like
The teeth.
they were
fully-
this is actually the root of all fairy tales, because it was instilling fear in children so they wouldn't stray off the little path and go into the forest or something. So every story has, but it was a bit much as a child, because you did think, oh, this is going to happen to me if I don't follow the rules.
Interesting. Yeah.
Elliot, on what occasion do you lie?
I think I probably lie in my work, in writing books, stories. Like, you're always lying in your work, because oftentimes it, a story will start with something that's real that happened to you that you've been thinking about and meditating on, and then you start taking those events and you massage those events, and you're basically at the end lying about those events and trying to turn them into, trying to take them into something that that feels like it has meaning to you, but which is ultimately a series of lies about the original kernel that was that event.
Interesting that since the books you've written about war, I've taught Tim O'Brien's stories a lot, because students really respond very strongly to this distinction between story truth and happening truth.
Yeah.
Something happened, but the way it happened is as important as what actually happened.
Right.
So when you're writing fiction about a kind of traumatic experience,
like I have an Uncle Don, and my Uncle Don is a great storyteller. And when Uncle Don tells these stories that there are many people in the family who were there when it happened, and Uncle Don will be the first to tell you, I have no interest in telling this story to you factually. I want a story that will elicit the same emotion that I felt when these events actually happened, and he'll massage it in any way he can to kind of get the same emotional response, whether it's a funny story or a sad story. And my father, who's very literal, this is his brother, it has always driven him absolutely insane when Uncle Don starts telling stories.
That's amazing. Is Uncle Don an important literary influence for you in some way then, would you say? Or I know your mom's a writer too and writes fiction as well, but.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Uncle Don tells great stories, and he's got a great sense of humor, and I admire both. But I think that, what we were saying about, the truthiness of a story, I mean, inevitably you start, I mean, you can call it lying, or you can just call it, fiction, but you're sitting there trying to create something that elicits a certain emotional response, and it's an architecture of, non-truths.
There's a great, I'm going to bastardize it, but there's a great Churchill quote about how in wartime, a truth must be escorted by a bodyguard of lies. Great.
Oh, that is great. Again, one of the benefits of doing all that laundry. Lee, you can toss a relatively obscure, because I feel like there are certain Churchill quotes we've all heard, but that was not one of them. So that reveals the 49 hours of hard labor. Elliot, what do you most dislike about your appearance?
I don't know. I feel pretty good about my appearance. I don't know. I have curly hair, which is great sometimes, but it's can get a little unruly on a summer's day when I haven't had a haircut in 3 or 4 months. So I don't know. Maybe that if I had easier to comb hair.
Yeah. But it's looking pretty came today. Did Lee cut it? I forgot how that happened. What?
We cut it. I've had one cut during COVID.
Okay.
Lee's always she's very gentle about it. She says, it's like, oh, I'm getting the boys' haircut. Interesting.
I'm taking the dog to the groomer. Any interest?
Men are very primal about their hair. Everyone thinks women are so connected to their hair, but men are too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if they have it, like my father is bald and would kill for any hair problem, just anything to be able to say and know that there was hair involved.
Now that I, thanks to you and our mutual friend John, did quite a bit of research on Amazon about available wigs, because I was going to get that fuchsia hot pink bob.
I still think you should. Yeah.
I haven't given up on that. But tell your dad there's some great wigs on Amazon.
Okay.
You ever really wanted one?
I'm almost afraid to let him know.
It's horrifying.
No.
We can refer him to Pietra Parker and Miss Cookie Dough, and their wigs are beyond Amazon. That's a level.
Yeah, our drag queen guests
will look like, Jean Harlow or Marilyn Monroe or someone like that, or Robert or John F. Kennedy right away. So we can recommend to Carrie's dad a real professional level of wigness, I think.
Yeah. He might even fight you for the fuchsia bob, Lee, depending on what's left after all of our guests have heard this and run out to order wigs. Lee, what do you most dislike about your appearance?
I remember when I was a kid or a teenager, one of my older brothers came to me with this, I think it was the first David Foster Wallace book, which was called The Broom of the System. And he sort of threw the book at me and he said, oh, this book was written about you. And the first line of that book is something to the effect of, all the girls I've loved have incredibly ugly feet. It was a way of my brother twisting the knife on always teasing me about my feet.
You have nice feet.
Because I have very long toes.
Not that long. Actually, if I can retract
I've always been insecure about my feet.
My feet are pretty
really
too, yeah.
Okay. I know, I didn't know. And I was raised to I have long toes as well. And my mother always said it was a sign of sort of patrician heritage.
Well, that's totally pretentious.
Right. Something else you hate. Yet again.
Just kidding. No, it is. I'm sure it is. But for me, I just felt like, my friends were always looking at my long bony toes. Anyway.
I've never looked at your long bony toes, but I might start. Uli, are you up next?
Which living person do you most despise, Lee?
Oh, Uli, I don't despise anyone. I really don't. I'll give, I'll give my option there to Elliot so he can say two people.
Elliot, who do you most despise, living people?
Oh, I don't despise anyone. Yeah, life's too short to despise people.
Okay.
Famous saying: if you haven't, the worst thing the worst thing you can do to your enemy is make him despise someone and give him a grudge. I mean, I think that's true. Hatred is really wears you out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Lee, what is the quality you most like in a man?
Don't say patience.
I think courage, intellectual courage, sort of moral courage, physical courage is great, but I think sort of moral character and courage. My dad had a lot of that. Elliot has a lot of that. I'm trying to raise the kids to have that. A sort of, I think being in the presence of people with moral courage makes you feel safe. So that's what comes to mind.
Elliot, how about you? Quality you most like in a man?
Honesty. Yeah, like kind of someone who's very truthful, honest. When they say they're going to be there, they're there. Like the type of friend who shows up at like 3:30 in the morning to give you a ride or something like that. Those types of friends. Yeah.
The opposite of, dude, we're gonna have such a great time when we all go to the south of France.
On TV, it's gonna be amazing. Like the person who's 3:30 because you really need a ride.
And actually shows up. Yeah.
These questions are very gendered, so obviously from the 19th century, but we kept the original questionnaire. What is a quality you most like in a woman, Lee?
I think it's probably the same, a sort of moral, a sort of character, such a hard word to define, but you sort of know it when you feel it. I think that's what I like in other people.
Yeah. And Elliot, how about you? What do you most like in a woman? What quality?
Grace, which is sort of like a combination of real kindness, like the profound kindness, not the superficial one, but the really kind of the deep kindness and courage, and kind of the alchemy of those two gets you grace.
Which words or phrases, Elliot, do you most overuse?
Maybe
I think that's my husband's also.
Maybe come on,
The guy in the $10,000 suit. Come on.
Yeah. I got a new dog in January for the kids, cute little dog, and I was like, oh, butcha. So Lee just finds me sitting in the room looking at
The decorated Marine.
I've never heard from you before, and now you say it all the time.
That is great. That's why every household should have at least one dog. Yeah. I think it brings out a different quality. Lee, which words or phrases do you most overuse?
I'm embarrassed to say it's probably fuck.
Right. Wasn't that your signature? Didn't that get you into trouble in high school, where the assumption was something about?
Yes, I was known for drinking Fresca, and in my high school there was an empty Fresca can found beside a stash of drugs, which were not mine, but the head of the house said something like, if there's a Fresca or you hear the F word, it's probably Carpenter. But I have to say, I really try not to use it around the children, but it just it does come out when I'm frustrated, or if I burn my egg or whatever. Right? Is that good? I need to work on that. I need to work on that.
Yeah, the earmuffs. The egg seems to keep coming back. What's been going on with your eggs?
Elliot really inspired me to learn to make the perfect hard-boiled egg. But I make eggs almost every day for breakfast for us or for the kids, so I've gotten much better at different kinds of eggs. So
you also do Lisa,
yes,
like shrieker, like all like are all like like hi,
Well, there also lots of bugs in the house.
Oh God,
This morning I wake up early to like get my work done. I woke up early and I forgot a notebook in our room. I tried to sneak back in, and Lee was still in the bed. And I mean, I think I just about killed her.
So early. It was so early. Elliot likes to get up very, very early, so.
No, Lee, I didn't know you had that, but yeah, I have a terrible startle reflex, and which results in shrieking, and it's embarrassing because it is involuntary. So I haven't found a way to work on it. Like, Paul and I are alone in this house, and at least once a day, Elliot, I'll turn the corner in this very small house, and he'll be standing there, and I'll shriek, and he'll say, "Who did you think it would be here? Like, why is it so surprising? It's just been the two of us for the last 3 or 4 months." And yet somehow the shriek, it comes from a very deep place.
Well, I found, this is the last time I'll digress, but I found a really large bug that was almost like a small rodent. And when I saw it, I screamed really loudly. No one came to my rescue. And I walked down the stairs right below the room I'd been in. And Elliot was quietly sitting at the kitchen counter, reading his book, eating a grilled cheese. And there's no way he didn't hear me. So I said, "Did you hear me?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I could be dead." He said, "No, I knew that was the shriek of you saw a bug." And so I just decided to ignore it.
I'll be up in a minute.
I guess it's the boy who cried wolf issue, that if you hear too many shrieks. Yeah, I've often been surprised at the lack of speed with which Paul has responded to my shrieks. because again, we could be dead, but maybe there is a way in which they can discern levels of distress.
The shrieks.
You know, well, and I mean, yeah, you're a soldier.
Top left corner. I know this one. I'll be there in a minute.
Elliot, what or who is the greatest love of your life?
He is the great love of my life.
Yes, Elliot is the great love of my life.
That's one of the reasons I was happy that you guys could be our first couples interview. I did tell you ahead of time that my husband said one of our dogs. So there's no pressure.
He was nervous, right?
No, I think it's a different kind of
love.
Different kind of love.
Lee, when and where were you happiest?
No, I'm dispositionally a happy person even when I'm anxious. So I run on a pretty steady state of low grade contentment, which I think is what I would call happiness. You know, I was pretty happy this morning having my nap until you came back to the room. Interrupted my dream, dreaming that I was in the south of France. No, it's hard for me to think about moments because I don't think about high points of happiness so much. I also have held on with a lot of care and love to hard and low moments, but I feel pretty content right now.
Elliot, when and where were you happiest?
Well, I'm very happy right now. I don't know. I think when I think of being a little kid in Southern California, there's sort of like a purity to those memories. You know, just sort of like endless blue sky days on the beach. You know, I don't remember going to school. I know that I did, but I remember like going to amusement parks and being on the beach and going to see movies and playing in the video arcade with my friends. You know, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, those sort of years, and they just sort of were like, just these sunny years.
Mm-hmm.
Being very pure in my memory.
Elliot, which talent would you most like to have? And Lee, how about you? Which talent would you most like to have?
I'd like to sing. I could have Beyonce's voice, or I'd like to be able to sing.
Is there a piano in the house there? Could Elliot start?
There is.
I mean, for the record, I can play heart and soul, chopsticks.
With the best of them.
I've got a few. But
all right.
It seems it's great. Like people who can play the piano. Like what a nice skill to have.
Yeah. And sitting down, I took years of piano lessons, but I still struggle with sheet music and, you know, like the slow, painful pauses in between the note that everyone who's around you knows should be coming next. And it just, that idea that you can just sit down and start playing beautifully with no effort is so amazing.
Vale, our oldest, who just turned 12, has been taking piano, and he's finally sort of mastered Für Elise.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have to hear Für Elise 86,000 times a day,
all day,
which is kind of a form of torture. But I'm so proud of him that it's okay.
Yeah. No, that's a level up from chopsticks, but it sort of is in that same repertoire of. Although maybe it'll become a sort of a Proustian trigger for you after the lockdown. That you'll hear it in an elevator on Muzak 10 years from now, and you'll be transported back to Delaware in the pandemic.
I know. I bet I will. Those triggers are so powerful.
If you could change one thing about yourself, Lee, what would it be?
It's a hard question. I think I'd like to be less hard on myself.
Mm-hmm. Elliot?
I just always like to have more peace, like just be able to like be relaxed easier, you know, when I'm working hard or something, but when the time to not work is there, to just be able to kind of just really relax and not be thinking about the next thing. So I work on it, but it would be great to master that, like playing the piano.
Yeah. So do you have trouble turning it off if you've been working all day? Is it hard to come out of that?
Yeah, or sometimes it's like, you know, it's Saturday morning, you know, you've got nothing to do until Monday, but for whatever reason, you're thinking about Monday. Don't think about Monday, think about Saturday and Sunday. Don't worry about it. You know, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Lee, what do you consider your greatest achievement?
I think that the children, that's probably just a boring answer, but I think the children and if there's any interest in something more than that, I think making the commitment to try and be a writer. It took me a really, really long time to get over all sorts of demons I had about trying out writing. I had to have a career and move past all of the architecture I'd built up that told me I didn't deserve to be a writer, and get far enough into it that I could look in the mirror and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah, you had a really incredible, Lee, since I've known you since before you identified as a writer. You had a really amazing experience, I recall, with your first novel, with your late agent Ed Victor, kind of presenting you with the challenge. Can you say just a little bit about that, because it's such a great story, and maybe it will inspire somebody who's listening to this and who wants to make that leap as well?
Sure. Elliot's helped me tell this story in a more succinct way. So my father died, and after he died, all I wanted to do was some kind of public service oriented job. He kind of left me that legacy or that desire, although ironically I found out much later that he actually wanted to be a writer. But so I was writing a book with Beau Biden, who was then the Attorney General for the state of Delaware, my home state. And I really decided that what I wanted to do with my life was work for Beau. He had been a JAG in Iraq and had a really promising career ahead of him. Probably the next step for him would have been governor of the state. And, many people thought he could have gone all the way to the White House. He was an incredible guy. And so I was sort of going to help him write that first campaign book. I'd written some speeches for him and had grown up with him. And while we were working on that book, and I had gotten an agent for the book, and we were shopping it to publishers, Beau had a stroke, very unexpectedly. He was in great health. He was very young. And when that happened and the book was put on hold, that agent sort of sat me down and said, Lee, I think that you should try and write a book under your own name. I said, that's crazy. He said, no, look, if you write 10,000 words under your own name and I like what you write, then I'll represent you. And I was reading at the time a lot of books on the military, not only because my work with Beau, but because my father had been in the military. And very long story short, I wrote 10,000 words to give to Ed. And I had decided to set my story in the Navy SEAL community, which was a pretty obscure community, although it fit into the special operations world that I was interested in at the time. And Ed had given me a deadline, which was May 3rd, 2011. I met with Ed on the morning of May 3rd, 2011. I gave him my 10,000 words. He said, what's it about? I said, it's about Navy SEALs. Ed laughed because that morning, Navy SEALs were on the cover of every newspaper in the world because we had the day before killed Osama bin Laden, and it had gotten out that the Navy SEALs were involved in that. And so Ed was able to help me sort of figure out how to sell that book to a publisher. And then Beau was diagnosed with cancer, and he died in 2015. And I sort of was in the situation of having written something, having never thought I could have a career as a writer, but not knowing where to go. And so I just, with Ed's encouragement, I just kept writing. And he was an incredible source of support and a great guy.
Lee, I actually remember from the beginning of your novel, there's a character, and the narrator describes the character as not being able to distinguish between the power of an idea and the power of an idea that's put into action. And you just started out talking about saying that you had this idea of being a writer, but all the things you had to overcome to be a writer. This kind of abstract idea to all of this. It's a very moving story that you got to, and I'm glad the book then, you wrote the book actually.
It's sort of, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had this sense that I wanted to tell that book was really about my father, trying to understand myself as a civilian, how I suddenly had ended up in what people were telling me was a military family, which is a longer story. And so in the book, as you know, Sarah's journey is to sort of figure out how her son ended up pursuing what he pursues. So.
But I think this kind of book that opens up the experience of the military for civilians, and that there's this shift from being a bystander to a witness to someone involved in the story. It's a very important story, I think, for America in a way, to sort of to bridge this kind of false divide between the military and civilian life. So it's very moving, I think, to sort of bring this character to sort of open this up for people, that this divide is it's false. I think it's also very dangerous for the country to have this divide maintained.
Yeah, and that's something, if you, again, ever want another very thoughtful conversation on that subject, Elliot is a great person to talk to about it.
Well, and I think I interceded about your greatest achievement, but Elliot had yet to answer that. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
But I think you're right, Elliot. Exactly. We're still with Lee. We could go on with Lee, but Elliot, what do you consider your greatest achievement?
The family I came from, everyone in my family was in business. So I had an early career in the military. But my Uncle Don, businessman. My father took a very circuitous route into business. And my grandfather on my father's side, I never knew. He died relatively young. I remember my father telling me at one point, and he kind of had a complicated relationship with his dad. I remember him telling me at one point, when I first went into business in my mind, our family business didn't do well when my grandfather was dying. So there were a lot of problems in the family. But he said, in my mind, when I was first going into business, he's like, it might sound silly, but I always had this image that if I could go to my dad and I could earn $1 million and I could give it to my dad, that everything I ever did in my life would be validated in his eyes. And so we sort of had, my father had told me that story once or twice, as I was like a young man, like kind of figuring out, who am I going to be? What am I going to wind up doing? And my father actually went on to, he and I are very close. He's one of my great heroes. He went on to have a very interesting and extremely successful, but at times very complicated business career. And then I ultimately, decided not to go into business and went into the military, which was a real departure for anyone in my family. And anyway, so when I came back from Iraq, I was awarded a medal for Valor. And so the last day of my unit, they gave it to me, and the entire battalion came out. It was like 1,000 Marines in formation. I went in front, and the general was there. My family came, and they pinned the medal on me. And then I went over to my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, here's your $1 million." I gave him a hug. And that was probably, I felt like my greatest achievement.
That's amazing. If you were to die, Elliot, and come back as a person or a thing, who or what would it be?
I think I'd like to come back as someone who gets to know my kids when they're older.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like when they're much older.
Yeah.
Or or maybe my probably more probably be like my grandkids. I'd like to come back, and be like, I don't know, like a friend to my grandkid or something like that. They didn't know I was, but I knew. My parents would watch their lives and be like, "So kid, how's it going?"
What do you think of that?
That is like, yeah, exactly.
I feel like Proust threads that needle so well, often the kind of fine line between observation and just creepy voyeurism. It's a tough line to walk, but I can imagine.
Like I want to be like the guy in the deli who gives them their bagel each morning, but I kind of get to see them and watch how they're doing.
Yeah, when they don't know that you're observing them for that closely.
But I think that comes out of that sense of like, and as you get older, like as I get older and as my kids get older, I see now with my parents, I have a brother. And my brother and I are also very close. And I see how my parents know, they're both in fine health and everything, but like they know that in their minds, when they're gone, they know my brother and I are going to take care of each other. And
Yeah.
And now that I've realized that, so my parents look at it, I look at our kids and I realize, I hope we do a good enough job with all of them that they're all equipped with enough love for one another when they're adults and they don't want to kill each other, that, that they then take care of one another. And that's, it sounds very obvious, but that's sort of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I'd like to come back as one of David Mortimer's dogs.
Okay, David Mortimer, a dear friend of ours, yours, mine, Elliot's.
But this will be my last reference to the Churchill book. Churchill hated de Gaulle, and de Gaulle used to go around telling everyone he was the reincarnation of Joan of Arc.
Oh.
So very famously at this dinner, when Churchill had just had a horrible fight with de Gaulle, he told everyone at the dinner, yes, the general keeps telling people that he's the reincarnation of Joan of Arc, but I can't seem to get my bishops to burn him.
I want to die and come back as Winston Churchill for the wit alone.
He was amazing. I'm going to take Elliot's answer, this idea that you could come back in the future and see not only just your own children, but sort of see the next generation, I think would be really interesting from a different point of view.
Did you ever see that Robert Downey Jr. movie, Chances Are?
Yes. And what is it? What was the? Yeah, he died, and then
he gets
to come back.
And the guy who was in I'm forgetting the actor's name. He was in Love Story. He was great actors in the 1970s. Plays Sybil Shepherd's husband. The opening scenes, he's crossing the street in Georgetown. He gets hit by a car. And then he's reincarnated. He gets reincarnated as Robert Downey Jr. But they forget to give him the injection in heaven that zaps his memory. So he has all the memories of the old guy. And then he meets basically his daughter at college. And then he goes home and meets Sybil Shepherd again, who, and all the memories start coming back.
Yeah, I remember I loved that movie, actually.
It's a pretty sweet movie.
Yeah.
I think, Carrie, I'm trying to think whether Paul said that's someone we should interview for the podcast. I think he may have said Robert Downey Jr.
He did not. No, he said, when asked who
he
would like to hear, he said Mandy Patinkin.
Oh, okay.
Totally different.
Totally different. All right, same universe. Totally
Kettle of fish.
Okay.
Yeah, but it kind of had that quality. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. wouldn't be bad, but I loved those movies of that era before Robert Downey Jr. seemed like before the whole Iron Man moment, right?
Well, you can't.
The next question is for the two of you together. Where would Lea and Elliot, where would you most like to live?
You go first.
Together?
You have to answer together, both of you.
A count of three.
Yeah. No, it's not a 10.
Yeah, the count of three is great, and then we'll see.
Okay. 1, 2. All right, on this, I'm going to shut my eyes and plug my ears, and Lee can say hers, and then I'll say mine.
Okay.
Go, Lee.
I'd like to live on a snowy mountaintop, but I know he'd like to live in London.
Okay, great. And now you can wake him up from his state of...
Elliot?
Well, my favorite city, I lived in Istanbul for a number of years, and that's probably my favorite city. I don't know if we would live there together full time again, but I grew up in London, and I love London.
Yeah.
So between London and Lee said a snowy mountaintop. So that's got to be big. You can try that. We'll let you guys work that out. So this beautiful.
We'll probably be here.
We're probably going to
be
Delaware is like the natural compromise between
fantasies. We like to have our fantasies.
Yeah, that's right. That's nice.
What is your most treasured possession? And I guess I'll have you two answer that one separately.
Oh, that's hard. No, I have these, I don't wear a lot of jewelry, but I have these 2 saints medals that I wear on a piece of parachute cord that actually I took from Elliot, or he gave to me. And I feel sort of attached to that, if that counts. It's my parachute cord. It's my
Oh, I've seen that. I never knew that was a parachute cord.
And I wear it all the time.
Yeah.
And when I met Elliot, he was wearing the parachute cord, and these 2 saints medals were given to me by 2 sort of surrogate mothers in my life. And yeah, I don't know why. I'm not deeply religious, but I care for this a lot.
Yeah, the parachute cord was, I used to wear my dog tags on it in my pocket, and then I started wearing it around my neck. And then when I was out of the service, and I had a St. Michael's medal I wore on it, and then I gave it to Lee. And then I would say for me, possessions, well, you know, I have for my kids, I've told my daughter, I mean, I don't think these are the most valuable possessions I have, but I've told my daughter like that cause they've asked me, I said, you know, you'll have all my war medals. Like I'll give those to my daughter, because we've always talked about what it means to like be brave and things like that. And I want her to have those. And then I have my watch, which I also wore all through the wars. And I've told my son when he gets old enough, he can have that watch.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. It's great. Do either of them show any interest thus far in a military career?
My son very intensely, which I have mixed emotions about. But
sure,
you know, and I'm not really the type of person that like I don't have all my stuff up everywhere, but he has this very, very intense interest. But you know, he's 8, so we'll see what happens.
Right. What do you regard, Lee, as the lowest depth of misery?
I think the day my father died was the lowest I've ever been.
Yeah. How long ago was that now? 10
years? That was 11 years ago, yeah.
Elliot?
The idea of not having a purpose, like not knowing what I'm getting up to do each day is miserable. You know, not feeling like I have a mission.
Yeah.
So I really need that. That's where I derive my joy.
Yeah. Did that that mission drive, would you say that was kind of the chicken or the egg in your choosing a military career to begin with? Is it?
Yeah, well, I was as a young man, a very unlikely military officer, because all in my teens, I was a, you know, ne'er-do-well, skateboarding, baggy pants having, big afro wearing.
Yeah, the hair alone.
Yeah, lots of hair. But I was very into skateboarding, and that was my mission. And then it became the military, and then you know, so people who know me kind of say I've always had these chapters. It's funny, you know, when I was in the military, I used to have this reoccurring dream. And in this dream, my hair would be long again, and I would be out surfing or skateboarding. I was probably smoking some weed or doing something I shouldn't be doing, kind of reverting to my old ways, regressing. And I would kind of wake up in a panic and touch my hair and realize I still had my buzz cut. The edge. I was, you know, still a 26-year-old lieutenant in my battalion. And, okay, I'm all right. I haven't regressed. And then I left the military, and, you know, I lead a more creative life now, and I never have that dream anymore. And to me, my analysis I've always done is that, you know, I think we all, you know, like Whitman says, we all contain multitudes. And there were just sort of parts of my personality I had to suppress in those years and I couldn't engage with. Just like there are also parts of my personality that I used to engage with a lot more, but don't engage with now. And actually, my reoccurring dream now is I'm 23 years old, and I'm always right at the beginning of my career in my training. And I am on a training exercise, and I don't know if I'm going to pass the exercise. And I'm terrified. Oh my God, am I going to fail it this time? Am I not going to be able to do the thing this time like I did it before? And I have that dream now probably every I don't know, a couple months.
This leads to the next question. What is your favorite occupation, Elliot?
Like if I had an alternate occupation that I could do?
Could be what you're doing now or an alternate one, something you're not doing right now.
Well, I would say I love what I'm doing right now. I'm very, very satisfied. I love my work. Yeah, I'm content.
Lee, how about you? What was your favorite occupation?
I think writing.
So you're both doing what you love right now.
Yeah.
Although Formula One race car driver in the 1970s is a close number 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That we should have addressed that with reincarnation too. Could you come back as that, while also having a sort of loving surveillance over your future
Yes.
grandchildren. That does, I think, kind of any job in the 70s just seems cooler too.
At this moment.
Homicide detective in the 70s.
Yes.
Fashion model in the 70s. Let's see. What, Lee, is your most marked characteristic? What you think people notice about you first?
I'm actually very clumsy, but I don't know if that's the lead for people who haven't known me for a long time. I think reserve. Hysterically funny. I mean, I think
Hysterically funny.
I'm
I mean,
reserved.
not to sound like a total misogynist, I think you're very beautiful.
Yes, I know. Actually, Lee, I remember one of the, I don't think I've ever told you this, but the wife of a friend of ours, so Judith Leclerc, used to say to me when you and I were first becoming friends, she'd say, "Oh, that's so sweet. I saw that you were, at that event with Lee. Lee just has that face." And she would make like a little kind of heart-shaped shape around her face, which is not as heart-shaped as yours. And I always felt like that was such kind of nice shorthand for both your beauty, but also the kind of the personality that your heart-shaped face exudes.
I'm super accident prone and clumsy, much to Elliot's amusement. So I'm always spilling a soup or tripping on a rock or something. And it's interestingly, my now 12-year-old is the same way. So I actually, it's genetic, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my mother is very accident prone, and so am I. And it really is a strange thing to think that you could transmit that quality somehow. Elliot, what is your most marked characteristic, I guess, in this current incarnation?
I would say one that, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say that about yourself, but I would say one that goes through every carnation of my life for every chapter is my dogged insistence on referencing movies.
It's one of the things I love about you.
I shouldn't be referencing movies, but I don't know.
Yes, it's true.
I've like ever since I've been a little kid, I've always done this. I don't know, maybe I think I have an associative mind, and oftentimes it associates with a movie, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is just like that scene in blah. And I'll be so tickled by it. I'll have to say it to someone, even though I am sure they've never seen that movie or recall that scene.
And actually, the first time I met Elliot's father, who I was very intimidated by, sort of halfway through the meal, somehow the movie The Godfather came up, and he turned to me. I really felt like I was on a quiz show. And he said, "Lee, what's the 6-word line from that movie that no one ever forgets?" And by the grace of God, I remembered, "Leave the guns, take the cannoli."
Take the cannoli.
So good. Yeah.
I think I won him over in that moment.
True story.
So, I mean, maybe that's not genetically transmitted, but it's something that's in the atmosphere in the Ackerman house.
I guess we love movies, but
yeah. Elliot, what do you most value in your friends? You've already talked about this a little, but maybe want to say a little more?
Yeah, just that trait of honesty. People who really show up. And isn't it interesting? It takes crises like these, and you start to figure out who your people. You figure out who your people are. And it can surprise you.
Yeah. Was military life? Was that another thing where you kind of see when the chips were down who your people were?
Interestingly enough, so many of the people you go to war with, you already know. And so you've been training together and known each other for some months. And I think for me, the expectation was, well, then we'll get to war, and then we kind of see, what people are really made of. And actually, you already knew what everybody was made of. And I can think of very few cases where anyone really surprised you.
Yeah. That's interesting. A friend of mine likes to quote, a friend of mine worked at Island Def Jam Records in the 90s. And apparently Jay-Z at the time had a sort of an aphorism, which is, you are who you were before you got there. Exactly. This idea that basically you're always the same. So you're Jay-Z super famous, or you're Jay-Z not super famous and you're the same person. But it's interesting to think about that applied to the military, because I think as a civilian, my assumption would be that somehow life in war is so different that it shows a different or deeper side of people, and
Or
not at all.
Hey, it doesn't matter the rocks that I got. I'm just Jenny from the block.
You used to have a little, now you have a lot.
Yeah.
About hustlers for a long time. Want to have that conversation.
So what
I most admire in my friends is loyalty. Although I will say a friend of mine showed me this picture recently, and it was a pyramid, and it was the hierarchy of friendship, and at the second tier to the top of the pyramid was I will take a bullet for you, and the very top little triangle was we talk on the phone.
Oh, Lee, that's a good one for us.
That's a good one for us, because I feel like I could count on one hand the people I actually speak on the phone with.
Same here. And I don't like the phone with most people, actually.
Yeah, and those are very important friendships.
Yeah, the idea that a bullet is less painful than the phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lee, who are your favorite writers?
Oh gosh, so many. Elliot Ackerman and Caroline Weber.
Nice.
Actually, the writers who've been real touchstones for me since I was a teenager are Tom Stoppard, David Hare, Tony Kushner, Edward Albee. Really, it was playwrights that first got me really into language. And so when I'm sort of feeling low and I want to pick up writers that are going to remind me why I write, there are a lot of playwrights in that category. Carol Churchill, of course, Shakespeare, but probably Tom Stoppard and Tony Kushner topping that list. Mm-hmm. And in terms of prose writers, as Caroline and Elliot know, I love Joan Didion. She's been I don't know her, but she's been a touchstone for me in many, many ways. And I've also been listening to all of her nonfiction during COVID, which has just reminded me sort of how she uses language. I love Elizabeth Hardwick, but they're just too many to mention, but I'll start off with those.
Elliot, how about you?
I always then start cataloging, like, what have I read recently is always kind of where I go. The stuff that I feel like was foundational that I read, I don't know if it's what I'm thinking about as much these days, but obviously it informs you. I mean, I like Conrad, I like Graham Greene, I like Hemingway, I like Didion, I like Tom Stoppard too. I love Lee. I love all of her stuff. I was recently just like rereading some Richard Yates and a book of his I never read before called Young Hearts Crying. It's just such a good book. Like, it just sort of floored me how good it was. And I was recently reading one of Shelby Foote's novels. I mean, he's the most famous for the narrative history of the Civil War he did, which is this huge 3-volume tract. But he was a novelist. And I was sort of the book was Love in a Dry Season. And it's just like such a beautiful book, and I don't think people read it that widely. And it kind of was impressing on me. There's just so many beautiful books that, for whatever reason, just kind of bloom and then, stay in the corner.
Right at the start of COVID, when things were very high anxiety and schools were closing. And in that moment, Elliot had given me a copy of John le Carré's The Little Drummer Girl, which I had never read. And I have to say, that's one of the best books I've ever read. I was completely drawn into this world he creates and this story he tells in order to look at the Middle East conflict. And I really admired what he did with that book. Le Carré.
I think he's one of my husband's favorite writers. Uli, I forgot. Did Paul say that on his podcast?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He reads very little fiction, but Le Carré for him is so important. I haven't read Little Drummer Girl. And then what was the Yates book that you mentioned, Elliot?
Young Hearts Cry.
Young Hearts Cry. I want to get that too.
And he's one of these writers who just does a great job in a novel of like taking, he always traverses like at least 50 years in a book.
That's impressive.
It's like a skill to make like a compelling book that's like 250 pages where you cover that much time.
Elliot, you're friends with Shelby Ford's son, right? Photographer.
Yeah, UG. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I know UG. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, very southern. Like it's actually.
He's done the last two author photos for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Actually, I actually haven't seen him. I saw him for his last book event, maybe 2 years ago already or something in the city. Oh, I saw that somewhere. Get a connection. Who is your hero in fiction or film, Elliot? An invented character.
Oh man. I don't know. Maybe in film, maybe it's Ferris Bueller.
More than Ricky Bobby?
No, Ricky Bobby's certainly up there. I mean, maybe a little bit of Ron Burgundy too. I'm an unabashed Will Ferrell fan. I mean, particularly his sort of stuff from the aughts. I mean, I think it's just like it's tough to do better. I don't know. Like, listen, when I watch movies, I mean, I love all sorts of films, but like, I love a good comedy. And I'm trying to think the last really great one I saw, but I feel like we don't kind of have those really seminal comedies don't kind of come out the same way.
And any characters in books, because we just updated because PROUST, he didn't have the movies when he answered this the first time around in 1895.
I think maybe Pyle in The Quiet American. I sort of identify with.
Yeah.
The guy who just doesn't know what he doesn't know and is a little bit hapless. I like to think I haven't always been Pyle. Maybe I've always been trying not to be Pyle.
I think if you're thinking that you're trying not to be Pyle, then by definition you're not Pyle.
One can only hope.
Right.
Lee, who is your hero of fiction?
That's a tough question. Well, as I was just thinking about Tom Stoppard, as we were talking about him, I remember so vividly. I was in school and I had the opportunity to go see his play Arcadia at Lincoln Center, and that play has been a real touchstone for me in a lot of ways ever since. And although she's quite young, the character of Thomasina in Arcadia, who's the math prodigy, loosely based on Ada Byron, I think, who weeps as she reads the history of the burning of the library at Alexandria and sort of has a sneaker crush on her cute tutor, Septimus, played in that original production by Billy Crudup. I think that was like his first big role. But yet Stoppard's women, like Shakespeare's women, are strong and complex and so damn smart. There's something, I think I'd like to be a woman in a Tom Stoppard play, probably any one of them. If I could.
That is so nice. I love Arcadia. It's one of my favorite plays.
It's just perfect what he does.
Remember all the two times in it or something, in that woman in the class. I also always thought, and I don't know if this is right, but I always thought it's a reference to Wilde's Importance of Being Earnest, where you have Miss Prism as the math teacher, this very stern governess or something like that, which happens to be one of my favorite plays because I think it's one of the great achievements in the English language. But Thomasina is a great character. It's a wonderful character.
And there's that amazing, she inspires one of my favorite speeches in all of Stoppard, which is as she's weeping over the destruction of the library at Alexandria. The tutor, Septimus, gives this speech in which he essentially says, we pick up as we lose things.
What are your favorite names?
I guess Phelan, Alexis, and Coco and Ethan, the kids' names. Our newest dog is Tuesday, and I love the name Tuesday. I sort of wish if we had another daughter, maybe she'd have to be Tuesday too, or something. Tuesday's a great name.
It causes all sorts of scheduling confusions. Where you're like, pick up Tuesday, and
what are you doing Tuesday?
Yeah. Where's Tuesday? Yeah.
I mean, it's not Pliny the Elder. Is it Pliny the Elder or Pliny the Elder? No, I like contemporary names. My boys both have family names. All the kids have family names. So, how about you? You're gonna say Genghis Khan.
Say Genghis Khan. I like Tuesday. Lee came up with the name Tuesday for our dog, and I love it because good things happen on Tuesdays. Elections are on Tuesdays. Books are always published on Tuesdays. And Lee and I met on a Tuesday, so it was sort of a perfect dog name for us.
Did you really?
Yeah, we met on
You remember the Tuesday?
Yeah, because it was the day Lee's first book came out. We met.
You met on the really?
Oh, nice.
Oh my God. Okay, that's another whole, maybe not a podcast, just a conversation over our cocktails.
Lee, what is it that you most dislike?
What is it that I most dislike? Cocktail parties? No, I most dislike social obligations that leave me feeling anxious. I think that's, and I most dislike, when someone is unwell or in pain. I mean, there's so many different levels at which to answer that question, but I think on one side of the spectrum of what I dislike is cocktail parties, and on the other side of the spectrum is when one of the children is in pain, any kind of pain.
Yeah. Elliot, what do you like?
Well, not to put it on the level of one of the children is in pain. I think that's, the top of the pyramid. I dislike complaining in the face of a great challenge. If that makes sense. Like God knows I'm someone who will complain. When I was in the Marines, there was a classic truism, which was, the only time you have to worry about a Marine is when he stops bitching. Because something's really gone wrong. If they're all complaining about something, like they're fine. But,
that's like French people, yeah.
Yeah. But, there are those moments where like something real happens and like we have to rise up and deal with it, like whether it's personally in your life or, and when the response to that is sort of complaining or whining, like that really, I really dislike that, like when it's game time, like it's game time. And I really admire people who can recognize the difference between the two. Shut up, don't complain. Like, let's just get through this.
As Winston Churchill said. What, Elliot, is your greatest regret?
Probably the times in my life when I didn't do that, when I maybe complained a little too much, and I identified the severity of the moment and said something I shouldn't have said, or didn't appropriately rise to a challenge for less for myself, but like more for like people, who kind of needed me to provide a certain level of emotional support or empathy that for whatever reason I couldn't in one moment. I know that's sort of a vague answer, but I'm certain I have not risen to every challenge that I've been offered in my life, obviously.
Sure. Well, I'm not sure about obviously, but okay. Lee, what is your greatest regret?
I've thought a lot about regretting saying no to doing things with my father that he asked me to do before he died, because I had that sort of impenetrable sense that no one's ever going to die at that time in my life. And he had lived and worked in China. He asked me to go to China with him. I said no, because I was too busy doing whatever my 25-year-old self wanted to do. And later, having lost other people in my life and thinking back on choices that I made, I think everyone goes through this. As you get older, you get so sensitive to, hey, of the handful of people I want to spend time with, when they call me up and they want to take a walk, that is more important than getting through my emails or whatever other thing I'm doing. So when I think about regrets, they're not spending more time with people who are no longer with us.
Right. Lee, how would you like to die?
I know how you'd like to die.
We have a deal that she's not allowed to die before I die. So
Okay.
the day after she can go.
All right.
I'm sorry, but Elliot has always liked the T.E. Lawrence death, which is, on the motorcycle, vaulting through the, English countryside. And
Well, but there's one important caveat to that. And I'm like 95 years old.
yeah.
Okay, right.
Old T.E. Lawrence.
Very old, and like I'm just, and then boom.
And Lee's still with us at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the way I would answer that is I'd like to die knowing that the children or the people I love the most are okay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was with my father when he died, and I remember just repeating to him, I'm going to be okay, because I thought that that would be helpful. And I don't know if it was, but I'd like to feel, you like to feel that you're leaving the people that you love and they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her answer, of course, is better than my motorcycle answer.
Better in what sense?
But what Lee said, well, more high, obviously more high-minded. So I agree with what Lee said. But if I could know they're all okay, well, I'm 95 on my motorcycle, plowed in, and you can be in the sidecar, or you can go the next day right after.
I love all the next day. She can hurl herself onto your funeral pyre.
Yeah, however she wants to do it.
Okay, this is the 35th question. Elliot, what is your motto?
I'm too drunk to taste this chicken.
As Colonel Sanders says.
All
right.
This chicken.
I'm too drunk to taste this chicken. The Talladega Nights, The Legend of Ricky Bobby. It's really so many lines in that movie, I think, are a good motto, but
yeah,
as usual, you've pulled out the best one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lee, are you reflecting on other Will Ferrell masterpieces?
I just don't know them as well as Elliot. My dad used to say this thing. I mean, if you knew him, he was the opposite of pretentious, but it sounds pretentious anytime anyone says anything in Latin. But he used to always say, with a sort of sly smile, tempus fugit, errant hic. And then he would say, which, as you know, means time flies. Here we are. And many years later, when I wanted to use that in my book, I discovered that's not what it means at all. I mean, tempus fugit is time flies, but errant hic does not mean here we are. But Daddy just held on to that, and he got a lot of mileage. I think I probably used to say that, thinking I was sly and slightly funny. But I need to. I think my motto is please. That's probably what I say more often than any other word.
Please, as in
Please,
like bitch, please.
Yeah.
Elliot and Lee, we have one more question we add to this podcast, which is, who would you like to hear from as a guest on this show? Anybody you can think of who you would like to hear respond to the same questions you just responded to?
Tom Stopper.
Wonderful. Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess because I'm talking about Colonel Sanders' chicken, Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Or you guys should have Huggy on. He'd be great.
He's great.
He'd be.
I was thinking when you said Shelby Foote, I remembered that I haven't seen Huggy in about 2 years or so, but I would love. He's so funny and charming, and he has this. And Caroline, you'll love him because he's very Southern and identifies very strongly with this part of the country, right? Like this.
I feel like you must have met him, Carrie.
Yeah, I don't think I have. I'm so dismayed to know that maybe I missed the chance at something with the two of you.
No, you'll meet him again. I love him dearly, and he's so Southern and sweet, and we've spent a lot of time with him. And he also has this very funny, charming, hard to describe quality where he'll, come into the house and he'll say, like, God, guys, I'm so sorry. I just, I was on the bus and my friend, had to get off, and, which friend, Huggy? Oh, Keith. Keith, who, Huggy? Oh, Keith Richards. Keith, you're on the bus with Keith Richards? Oh yeah, but anyway, it was just because Mick. Anyway, guys, let's make sandwiches. You know,
Yeah.
he's just got this very, he's had the very, he's just great.
He's a great photographer. He is really
talented.
very
We have, Huggy took a picture of us. I'll send it to you guys.
Oh, please do. Yeah. Oh, could we use that on our website for your joint pic? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have one of the two of you together. We have little thumbnails of people with their mini bios, but having a joint picture would be great. You all, thank you so much for doing this. I know time flies. You were sweet to take the time, and
It's Tempest.
Tempest Fugit, here we are.
Tempest Fugit, here we are, and we really appreciate it. And we also want to point out to the listeners, so 11 Days is your beautiful novel, Lee, and I think Elliot.
First novel, second novel, Red, White, Blue.
Oh, Red, White, Blue, and then Red Dress in Black and White. That is Elliot's most recent novel. So we'll be sure that our listeners have access to find all these. Because one of the fun things about the podcast is we have such a range of guests, but to get to know you first through your books, but now in person is really wonderful. So we'll make sure that listeners actually have a chance to find you on social media, etc., and get to those books as well.
Thank you so much.
It's really a pleasure. Thank you. And now you have to go back. We're also really happy that you were able to find time away from your 4 children to spend with us on Zoom.
Yes.
And your dog Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
All right. I'll see you guys Friday. Lots of love. Thank you for doing this.
Bye.
Mwah, mwah. Bye. Bye.
Bye.